Medley, I was in upstate New York by myself for a few days, unplugged, in a cabin, no phone or TV. No big problems or crises, but one night, in the dark, I went down to the lake and stood on the pier. The lake was calm, the air still. I stood there for a long time just thinking about my life, where I was, what my lot in life was. My life had been out of control. I was weary of the fight. To be good, to do the right thing, to get ahead. The demands of my life were bigger than I could handle, and I blamed him. I told him how hurt I was at some of the things that were happening to me. I hated the struggle I was in. Why did you make it this way? Why couldn't things just be easier? You know what I mean. The kind of things you think God can't handle. You must just laugh. I cleaned out my closets on him. I was totally honest. And then I stood there and listened. Nothing changed. Everything was still calm. But slowly something snuck inside me and started coating my insides with a kind of a peace. A peace that comes from knowing that he knows what I'm going through. And he loves me more than I know. In my mind, I could picture him asking, am I enough? I can just imagine God asking the question, is what I did for you on the cross enough, Cindy? Am I enough?
I never saw it coming. I came home from work, another long day, and he had this great spread on the table. He's the one that does the cooking in our family. It was like Thanksgiving. Then he said, very casually, I want a divorce. Just like that. He was quitting on 12 years of marriage. But the thing that really got to me was the way he said it. No emotion whatsoever. It was as if though he were ordering at a restaurant. I'll have the breaded fish and a divorce, please. My heart. I mean, I knew things weren't perfect. He worked too much. We didn't talk much. But everybody has their problems. And why the big meal? He said it was his way of starting a new life. I stumbled through the next couple of days, trying for a hope that somehow we could work things out. Trying to not let the pain overwhelm me. I made it to church that Sunday. We always went to church on Sunday. The church where all our friends were. The church where we were married. I remember walking in alone and sitting in the back row. The music and service always made me feel so close to God. But not this time. God and I were strangers. No, worse. my chair and saying, "Hey everybody, my husband just told me he wanted a divorce, and you're just sitting here singing." Well, I've got one question. Where's God when life stinks, huh? Where is he? Well, I was just about to walk away when they sang a song that I hadn't heard since I was a little girl. And one verse went right through me. One line. Jesus loves the brokenhearted because his heart was broken too. Jesus loves the brokenhearted because his heart was broken too. That's all I heard for the rest of the service. I just clung to this one thought that he knows where I am. He knows. He cares. The cross proves it. I never knew how deep his love was until I really needed it.
Columbia University in New York. That's where I was when the cross came crashing into my life for the first time. In my dorm. I don't know what I was doing. Homework, maybe. Not. When all of a sudden my roommate comes in the room and she's got tears in her eyes. You know, I didn't know Angela at all before college, but she and I became fast friends. We became sisters. And she's standing there looking at me, and she's so sad. So I asked her, "What's wrong?" You know, my mind goes through a list of possibilities. Who died? What did Steve do this time? Is it something with school? And she says, "No, it's you." "What about me?" She says to me, and this is her talking, "I was down the hall in my Bible study talking about heaven, and it hit me. I can't imagine heaven without you, Sue. What makes someone care about you that much?" You know, it was in that moment that I realized the significance of the cross before I even understood it.
I stand here, and what? I should be moved. I know that Jesus died up there. Nails through his flesh, despite the fact he could have called on squadrons of angels to come and stomp all over those cocky soldiers like they were ants. All that gore and pain and suffering, I believe he went through that. He was up there, and he paid for the sins of the world. I know that in my head, and I've trusted in that knowledge. But here's the hard part. Here's the part I can't quite see. Who did he do it for? So loved the world. I believe that. When I look up there, it's easy for me to see his hands, arms stretched out to reach the whole world. I can see that part of it. Nails through his flesh, as gruesome as that is, I can picture that. I can even see his head, his ears, and his tired neck. Even his chin and his cheeks. But above that, it gets foggy. Between his forehead and his cheeks, there's a shadow. I can't see his eyes, because I don't know where he's looking. When I imagine his eyes, they have to be looking somewhere. My mind automatically wants to draw in his pupils, but it can't. I try to see them looking at me, but I can't. I realize that right now, it's beyond my capacity to see that. to think that he might be looking at me with compassion, that he's hanging up there for me. Instead, I feel like he's dying for somebody else, anybody else, everybody else. And I know that comes from my twisted history, but that doesn't help. I wish I could force it down past the conflict of my self-hatred. I wish I could swallow it down to my heart, but I can't. So here I am again, faced with those missing eyes.
The cross came crashing into my life recently. I mean, I've always been a Christian. I grew up in a Christian home. I've always gone to church. And sure, that's good and all, but sometimes I feel like I'm at a disadvantage. I mean, I've always heard people talk about God and their faith, but I just don't understand what they get so excited about. I realize I'm not as amazed at what Jesus did for us on the cross as I should be. But recently I got a new perspective. I'm 15 years old. Well, actually, I'm 15 and a half, and I'll be getting my license in July. And let me tell you, July is taking forever to get here. Anyways, this boy, Ricky DiGerio, DJ, already had his license and a car when he ran right through an intersection through a red light, and he was hit in the side. He was hit really bad. So while he was in the hospital, people were talking about what had happened and praying for him. And then he died. He just never came out of his coma. Nobody I had ever known had died before. At least nobody like my age. And then it hit me. People really die. It's going to happen to me. And now I realize more than ever that what Jesus did for us on the cross means that we will live in heaven one day. And that's amazing.
Panera's bread has always been a place of inspiration for me. Usually it's the coffee, or the bread, or whatever I'm reading that day. The last Friday morning was different. I was on the way to my son's cross-country meet, and I thought I'm going to stop and get a cup of coffee and a bagel. And I'm standing in line, and I look over to the right, and I see this man sitting all alone. He's drinking his coffee, looking at the classifieds, circling ads. But what struck me about him is he looked so tired. Well, I get my bagel and my cup, and I'm going to fill it up. And just as I'm finishing, I realize that that tired man is standing right beside me, refilling his cup. And just as I reach for the half and half, our eyes met. And I felt compelled to talk to him. Now, that's odd for me. I don't start conversations. So I hesitated. I nodded. He nodded. And went back to his table. I still felt compelled, so I quickly said, "Lord, give me the right words." And I heard, "Excuse me." It was him. He said, "Do you know, is Red Bank close to here?" I said, "Yeah, it's right down the road. Are you looking for a job? I saw you looking at the classifieds." He said, "No. Looking for a place to live, so I can get my son back." Oh. So, you don't have your son? "No," he said. "The state came and took him. Said I can't get him back until I find a decent place to live." He filled me in a couple of the other details, and then it was almost like he was encouraged that I was listening. And he said, "I've got to show you a couple of pictures of him." And he goes back to his table. Now, I didn't know what to do, so I grabbed my wallet and I started looking for anything with the church's number on it, and so I could give it to him. What I found instead was a card, a laminated card that a friend had given to me a couple years before. It had a picture of the cross on one side, and then on the other side it had verses. And just as I pulled it out, he was back. And he said, "Here, this is my son, Michael." Michael was beautiful. I said to him, "Do you have a church or anyone helping you with this?" He said, "I went to church about 3 or 4 years ago," and he said he liked it, but he said, "I had to stop going because the guilt was too great because of what I..." And he stopped. After an awkward moment, he looked back at me and he said, "I can't believe you even asked. I can't believe you're really even talking to me." And I told him, "I think I'm supposed to talk to you." I asked him his name. He said, "It's Joe." And I took a deep breath. I said, "Joe, there is nothing that Christ won't forgive." And I handed him the card. And I showed him my favorite verse in the back. "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest." His tired eyes filled with tears, and he looked up and he said, "Man, I could use a little rest." I grabbed a napkin and I wrote the church's number on it, my number, and I gave it to him. I said, "Joe, now if you go to church, you give me a call and I'll meet you there. And I look forward to meeting Michael." Well, we said our goodbyes, and I walked out. Something told me to look back through the window. And I saw Joe sitting with his back to me in that corner. And he'd look at the cross. And he'd flip and read a verse. Then he'd look at the cross. And he'd flip and he'd read a verse. And it occurred to me, how much help is offered right there on the other side of the cross. Not always resolution as we would find it, but help. While Christ hung in unimaginable pain on the front, how many gifts he offered us on the other side. Gifts like forgiveness,
Peace.
Healing. Unconditional love.
Mercy.